I want you to picture something. You're sitting on a cushion, maybe a chair, eyes are closed.
Yeah.
You've got a timer set for, say, 20 minutes on your phone.
Yep.
You're scanning your body, noting sensation. Tension here, itching there. You note a thought, thinking. You come back to the breath.
The standard practice.
It feels incredibly ancient, doesn't it? Like you were tapping into a timeless script, executing a technique exactly as the Buddha designed it 2,500 years ago.
But what if you aren't?
That's the question.
It's the question nobody wants to ask during a peaceful meditation session. But it's the one we have to ask. Because what if the mindfulness that dominates our apps, our corporate wellness seminars, what if it's actually a remix?
A remix, yeah. Or maybe even a completely different song that's just using some of the same samples. And that is the provocation for today's deep dive. We are peeling back the layers of history to look at the evolution of meditation. We're digging into a historical analysis of the Satipatthana Sutta.
Which is basically the Magna Carta of mindfulness.
It really is.
Yeah.
And we're drawing on the detective work of scholars like Doug Smith from the Online Dharma Institute, and also monastic researchers like Bhante Sujato and Bhikkhu Analayo.
And the mission here is really to understand the why behind the practice. Because when you look at the early texts versus what we do today, you find some some startling discrepancies.
Yeah.
We're talking about a shift from using mindfulness as a tool for deep trance-like concentration to using it as a standalone practice. And we also have to talk about some of the darker chapters, like the foulness of the body incident.
That story is absolutely wild. I think most people assume the history of meditation is just this, straight line of peaceful monks sitting under trees.
Not at all.
But it's actually full of twists and turns and even some tragedies that force the technique to change.
It's a messy history, but understanding that mess is crucial if you want to know what you're actually doing when you close your eyes.
So let's start with the biggest tension our sources highlight, the great split. If you walk into a meditation center today or open an app, mindfulness is presented as the main event. It's the destination.
That is the modern view, yes. Mindfulness is the Swiss Army knife that does it all.
You practice it to reduce stress, gain clarity, to wake up.
But if you go back to the ancient architecture of the teachings, specifically the Noble Eightfold Path, you run into a structural problem, a sequencing issue.
Okay, lay it out for us. Because usually we just hear the list, right speech, right action, and we don't think about the order.
Exactly. But the order matters. The path is a progression. And in that list of 8 steps, right mindfulness or samasati is step number 7.
Okay, so it's near the end. But what's at the very end? What's step 8?
Step 8 is samasamadhi, right concentration. And in the early texts, this didn't just mean paying attention.
It was more specific.
It specifically referred to the practice of jhana.
Jhana. We need to pause on that word because it's not really in the modern vocabulary. When the texts say jhana, what are they describing?
They're describing deep, altered states of absorption. We're talking about a state where the mind becomes so unified, so singularly focused, that your sensory input, it effectively shuts down.
Wow.
You aren't hearing the birds or feeling your knees. You are just flooded with intense rapture and bliss. It's a high-octane, almost psychedelic state, but it's produced entirely by focus.
So if we look in the sequence, step 7 is mindfulness, and step 8 is this deep concentration. That implies mindfulness comes before the main event.
Precisely. And that is the argument made by scholars like Bhante Sujato. In the early schematic, mindfulness wasn't the destination, it was the preparation. You establish mindfulness specifically to gather the scattered mind, to calm it down enough so you could enter jhana.
So mindfulness was the launch pad, and jhana was the orbit.
That's a good way to put it. And the theory goes that the awakening, the deep insight, it didn't happen during the mindfulness practice itself.
What happened after?
It happened after you emerged from that deep jhana state. You'd come out with a mind that was temporarily laser sharp, and then you would investigate reality.
That is a massive shift in perspective. It's like finding out that chopping vegetables isn't the cooking.
Right.
Chopping is just what you do so you can put them in the pot.
Yeah.
If you just chop forever, you never get soup.
And that's the critique of the modern approach, right?
Yeah.
We're just chopping vegetables forever.
But this begs the question. If the original manual says use mindfulness to get into these deep trance states, how did we end up with the modern instruction, which is basically just watch your breath and notice your thoughts? When did we decide to skip the psychedelic trance part?
Well, this is where history and sociology collide. We have to fast forward to the 19th and 20th centuries, particularly in places like Burma. You had figures like Ledi Sayadaw, who were facing a very practical problem.
For sure.
Jhana is incredibly difficult. It is not something you can squeeze in between a Zoom call and picking up the kids. Traditional jhana usually requires seclusion, hours of daily practice,
Yeah.
often a monastic lifestyle. It's an elite sport.
So if you're a layperson with a job and a family, you're essentially locked out of enlightenment.
Exactly. And the reformist monks, they wanted to change that. They wanted to democratize the practice. So they developed what is called dry insight, or vipassana.
Dry because it lacks the moisture of that rapture and bliss.
Yes. The theory was that you could bypass the deep, wet lubrication of jhana and go straight to observing reality, just using momentary concentration.
So you didn't need to be a monk in a cave.
No. You could be a merchant in Rangoon, or today, a graphic designer in London, and still be on the path.
It sounds like a survival strategy.
Ah.
To keep the religion relevant, they had to create a minimum viable product for the masses.
It was absolutely a survival strategy, and a brilliant one. It turned Buddhism from a niche monastic pursuit into a global mass movement. But, and here's where the scholars come in, we have to ask, is this dry insight actually supported by the ancient texts, or did they just, make it up to fit the times?
This is where we get into what you call textual archaeology, because I assume most people think these ancient texts are set in stone.
If only.
The Buddha said it, someone wrote it down, end of story.
Yeah, if only it were that simple. You have to remember, for hundreds of years, these were oral traditions. They were chanted.
Right.
And in conservative religious cultures, scribes operate on a principle of preservation. They are terrified of deleting anything the Buddha might have said.
Because that would be bad karma.
Terrible karma. You don't want to be the guy who lost a sutta, but if a monk thought, oh, this explanation from another sermon is really helpful, they might add it in.
So they erred on the side of expansion.
Yes, so the texts have a tendency to bloat over time. They get features added but never removed. It's like software that keeps getting updates but never cleans up the old code.
And so when scholars look at the Satipatthana Sutta, the version we have today, they see this bloat.
They see evidence of it, yes. It's massive. It's an encyclopedia.
Give us an example. What looks like an add-on?
Well, take the insight refrains. In the modern version of the text, after every single section, body, feelings, mind, there is a refrain that says, he contemplates the nature of rising, he contemplates the nature of vanishing.
Which is the core instruction of modern mindfulness. Impermanence.
It is. But Sujato argues that these refrains are likely a later cut-and-paste job. They don't appear in the same systematic way in parallel texts found in other languages.
So the theory is they were pasted in later to emphasize this new insight approach.
Exactly. Effectively overwriting the older instructions that were more about stability and concentration.
That is incredibly bold. It implies that the chorus of the song, the part everyone knows, might have been added by a cover band centuries later.
It's a controversial view, but the textual evidence is compelling. And there's another phrase that really stirs the pot, knowledge and vision.
I've heard this. In modern circles, it's interpreted as wisdom, understanding reality.
That's the standard take. But Sujato points out that if you look at the rest of the Pali Canon, the phrase knowledge and vision almost always refers to something else entirely.
What?
Extrasensory perception.
And we're talking psychic powers.
We're talking the cities, clairvoyance, reading minds, seeing the arising and passing of other beings in different realms.
Okay, wait. So the original sales pitch wasn't reduce your anxiety. It was focus so hard you can read your neighbor's mind.
In a manner of speaking, yes. It was about mastering the mind to a superhuman degree.
Wow.
But even if we leave the psychic stuff aside, because I know that's a hurdle, the strongest evidence for this concentration first theory is in the fourth foundation of mindfulness.
The section on dharmas, or phenomena. And in the version I've read, it is dense. It's got the 5 aggregates, the 6 sense bases, the 4 noble truths.
It's a doctrinal dump.
Yeah, it's a textbook shoved into the last chapter.
Exactly. But scholars agree the original version of this section is probably much, much shorter. It likely contained only 2 lists, the hindrances and the 7 factors of awakening.
And why is that pairing hindrances and awakening factors the smoking gun?
Because those 2 lists are specifically the manual for jhana. The hindrances, sensual desire, ill will, laziness, restlessness, doubt, those are the things that block deep concentration.
You have to remove them to enter the state.
And the 7 factors, those are the boosters. joy, tranquility, concentration, equanimity. Those are the qualities you cultivate to sustain the state.
So if the original text only focused on those two things,
Removing the blocks to focus and boosting the factors of focus, then the text is undeniably a concentration manual.
and the other stuff, the Four Noble Truths,
Likely moved there later, not because they're wrong, they are core teachings, but they were probably dragged in to make the sutta a one-stop shop, a comprehensive library.
it really reframes the practice. It shifts it from this passive just watching to something that feels more like active engineering. You're tuning the machine.
Active engineering is the perfect phrase. And we see the same shift from active and simple to complex and structured in the heart practices too.
The Brahma Viharas.
Like loving kindness.
Oh, this was one of my favorite parts of the research.
Yeah.
Because anyone who's done a loving kindness retreat knows the drill. You have the categories: myself, benefactor, friend, neutral person, enemy.
It's very structured, it's almost bureaucratic. Okay, filing love for the neutral person now.
Right.
That structure comes from the Visuddhimagga, a commentary written by Buddhaghosa in the 5th century, 1,000 years after the Buddha.
This is a later edition.
It was a pedagogical tool he created to help people who were struggling, but the early texts, they used the hornblower analogy.
I love this image.
It's so visceral. Imagine a strong hornblower standing in a field, blasting sound north, south, east, and west. The instruction was just to radiate.
You don't target specific individuals.
No, you just generate a field of love and blast it out in every direction, filling the horizon.
It feels so much more expansive.
Yeah.
And, frankly, less stressful. You aren't managing a contact list in your head.
It's an immersive state, not a cognitive exercise. And there's a similar, very subtle shift in compassion practice that our sources highlighted.
The shift from joyful wish to empathy.
Yes. In the early texts, compassion has an uplifting quality. It is a wish for others to be free from suffering, but it retains a sense of stability, even joy.
But over the centuries,
The interpretation shifted to becoming more empathetic, actually feeling the pain of the other person.
which we usually think of as a good thing. I feel your pain.
Socially, yes,
Yeah.
but biologically, it's dangerous. It leads to empathetic distress. If you actually feel the pain of every suffering person, you burn out.
So the original practice was maybe a safeguard.
Keeping the heart uplifted and protected while wishing well, rather than drowning in the sorrow of the world.
That is a crucial distinction. Speaking of traps,
Yeah.
we have to go to the dark side, because we usually sell meditation as this purely benign, fluffy activity. But the historical record contains a specific tragedy that forced the Buddha to rewrite the rules.
The foulness of the body incident. This story sounds like something out of a horror movie, but it's right there in the Vinaya texts.
So tell us.
Okay, so the Buddha gave a teaching on mindfulness of the body. But in this context, he didn't mean feel your toes. He meant visualize your internal organs. Meditate on the fact that you are a bag of skin filled with blood, bile, pus, and feces.
And the goal was to reduce vanity.
To reduce lust and attachment. It's a strong antidote. So the Buddha taught this, and then he went into solitary retreat for 2 weeks.
And when he came back,
He asked, "Where are all the monks? The assembly looks very thin." And the answer was, "Lord, they killed themselves."
ow.
A significant number of monks had developed such intense self-disgust, such a profound revulsion toward their own bodies that they either took their own lives or, and the text is quite graphic, they hired a sword bringer to kill them.
They essentially overdosed on the medicine.
They did. The practice worked too well, it created disenchantment, but without the balance of joy, it curdled into self-hatred.
So what did the Buddha do? Did he say, you guys did it wrong?
He immediately pivoted. He gathered the remaining monks and said, let's try something else. And he taught Anapanasati mindfulness of breathing. He specifically pitched it as a peaceful, sublime dwelling, a happy anchor.
That is such a human moment in the text. It shows these are psychotechnologies. If you tweak the code, you get a different output.
And sometimes that output is fatal, and that danger of misinterpreting your experience, it persists today. The sources reference the Brahmatala Sutta, which warns about the trap of experience.
This is the getting high on your own supply problem.
In a sense, yes. A meditator might enter a state of pure rapture and they conclude, aha, I have found it. The fundamental nature of the universe is joy. I am God.
But the Buddha would say,
He would say, no, you just found a temporary conditioned state. It feels like the ultimate truth, but it's just a chemical reaction. It passes. If you cling to it, you're stuck. You've built a golden cage.
and this brings us back to the role of the teacher. Because if you are just using an app and you hit one of these dark nights or these manic highs, the app can't talk you down.
That is the real risk. Doug Smith makes a strong point here. If you are doing 10 minutes a day to relax, you're fine.
Yeah.
But if you are going for deep, long retreat-style meditation, the kind that digs into the sub-basement of the psyche, you need a guide. Ideally, someone with psychological training.
Because the dark stuff doesn't just vanish.
Not even for advanced meditators. Restlessness, for example, is said to be one of the last fetters to break before full enlightenment. So you're going to be dealing with a messy mind for a long time. You need someone to help you navigate that.
So let's bring this all home. We've looked at the great split between concentration and insight. We've seen the bloat in the texts, the hornblower turning into a spreadsheet. If I'm a listener and I'm just trying to be a little less reactive at work, does this history invalidate my practice?
I don't think it invalidates it at all. I think it offers a liberating perspective. We often worry if we're doing it right.
Yeah.
Knowing the history shows us that right has changed over 2,500 years. The modern version, this dry, insight, lay-friendly practice, isn't necessarily wrong.
It's an adaptation.
It's a brilliant adaptation. Think about it. If the instruction had remained, go live in a cave and meditate for 12 hours a day, Buddhism would have died out.
You would never have left the forests of Asia.
Exactly. The remix is actually a survival mutation. The added parts, like the Four Noble Truths being inserted into the mindfulness instructions, they are valid teachings. They were just moved to a place where they could be most useful for people who couldn't spend 20 years in a monastery.
It's a user interface update. But knowing that it's an update helps us manage our expectations.
That is the key. If you sit down and you can't get your mind to start chattering and you feel like a failure, stop. You aren't a failure. You are simply trying to do a practice, insight, without the tool, concentration, that was originally designed to make it easy.
That is surprisingly comforting. It's like trying to unscrew a tight bolt with your fingers because someone took away the wrench.
Yay!
You might be able to do it, but it's going to be hard, so cut yourself some slack.
Exactly. The ancient monks had the wrench. We're mostly using our fingers.
So, here is the final thought to chew on today. We often obsess over purity. We want the original vinyl pressing of the teachings. But what if the light version, the version that strips away the impossible concentration requirements, is actually the version the world needs right now?
Survival often requires mutation. And if this mutation helps you be a little kinder, a little more present, then perhaps it's doing exactly what it needs to do.
Something to think about next time you're watching your breath or trying to read your neighbor's mind. A huge thanks to the work of Doug Smith, Bhante Sujato, and Bhikkhu Analayo for doing the hard digging. Check out the show notes for links if you want to geek out further. Until next time, keep diving deep.